United States federal government substantially reduced its foreign military sales of Lockheed Martin F-35 to Japan and finished one as China pursuit of F-35 judged imperials the Asian balance of power versus its arms racing geo. And 19 Japan's decision to buy 105 F-35 Lightning fighters may further fuel the arms race in Asia because that's a new challenge to China. The F-35 deal together with Tokyo's plans to modernize its fleet of the Lumos helicopter carriers to pose a threat to Beijing's game plan by increasing the operational reach of an Air Force. The F-35 can be seen as a vital part of the worldwide coercion strategy of the United States bound to balance up to its balance of power. And the nation states agree to give it a large quantity of the latest F-35 will put pressure on China to accelerate and improve the J-20 because the purchase will definitely trigger regional arms race. China do the same by developing and deploying more of its own advanced stealth fighter jets. And Japan responds by reconfiguring the Luzma helicopter destroy into an aircraft carrier. F-35's unique card on identity because they're terminal to manifestation and key plank in Japan's recent approach to international first and new foreign policy strategy clearly are applied to China's Belt One Road initiative because Japan's investments more than that as well because of the F-35s will also require respeed up to two carriers because which currently are reconfigured for helicopters. Japan moves to convert the Luzma's class with the ability to launch testing features over the F-35 to be essentially the only choice Japan thinks Japan into uncharted territory to convert the two Luzma class of destroyers into multiple aircraft carriers. These ships equipped with F-35Bs must not be considered attack aircraft carriers and constitute reports from D4 to order policy. No challenges would that principle ever sincerely been made to Japan into the rise of A because many foresee the armed threats are likely the result of Japan's commitment to create a true aircraft carrier because many will see this act as the beginning of the slippery slope towards eventual conflict that enables de facto offensive strike capability alone causes global war final in 17 the purpose of F-35B stealth fighters could walk into international crisis full by aircraft carriers and mobile military bases are inherently offensive by nature and it's move to upgrade the Luzon one draw attention to the attention of its neighbors by historical reasons. Japan uses World War II carrier fleet to launch a surprise attack against Pearl Harbor because it's carries at the center of the growing diplomatic storm as Japan to a new Luzon class ships, the biggest ships Japan has built since World War II because with a large clear deck capable to handle land, hold, and launch jump sets because the modification not likely to be dramatic. A new air group combining the F-35B would certainly give these ships a real strike capability independently as Sino-Japanese arms race causes nuclear war 10 and 15 because obviously East Asian arms lead to the security limit. There's result of misperception, conflict, sprouts, and open conflict are common to defense wall from its historical antagonists remain because they're by absence of institutions. Arms race is dangerous over vowing to resist calculation result in misperception. Chinese philosophy makes it to be convinced that Japan is right wing. There's also perception that China should assert its claims to the ECS and SCS conflict between China and Japan, but not so breach United States would draw any conflict with the into nuclear war, extinction, Caligrassi, 18 Great Power War. Thusly, avoided all chaff war between nuclear two powers cannot work because China would spell a war would spell the end of the entire human race. The nuclear weapons top powers won't be any policy makers have workers give the risk of annihilation to thought to deter world and nuclear powers by ensuring China's will always be open. The price of conflict can reduce the Thucydides trap and take draws in the U.S. into a nuclear war. 18 and 14 economies with any escalating Sino-Japanese conflict will likely remain between the United States and between them. The United States will enter the fray. American involvement seems to automatically need to intimate links between Japan and America's forces and C4ISR system. North Asia, China first instead of states very greatly against Japan and suppression confusion of a crisis. China's leaders only need to think that American involvement is the possibility to face access toward pressure because China would see target American C4ISR, including satellite capabilities, match and resort to satellite attacks because in response to everything that's against China's system, strategic and material factors, nuclear creation is less unlikely. Interdependence fails. China 12 interdependence does not prevent Beijing dangerously escalating government return to nationalism, diverting social tension because interdependence was broken. Nobody can escalatory controversy, financial crisis, is operating tensions and accelerating slide towards war advantage. Choose North Korea F-35 sales motivates Japanese acquisition of the Joint Strike Missiles that forces reactive North Korean protests around 17 because Japan is expected to purchase Joint Strike Missile because the House internally on the F-35 this weapon combined with the F-35 will permit Japan to get much closer with targets with a high degree of stealth because the JSM will give the Japanese military the ability to target launch sites in North Korea, deploying an offensive strike capability designed to eliminate targets at ranges of more than 300 kilometers. Will inevitably trigger protests from some Japanese neighbors. North Korea claims that Japan is trying to reinvade. We'll see the latest developments of further evidence of Tokyo's imperial ambitions. North Korea preempts both Japan and the United States. Between Japan is already exporting conventional strike capability. The structure raised regional concerns about shift to Japanese military posture because the developments of average reasons being lack of coordination with the dangerous taxation on the planets because as all else would build independent preemptive strikes. The risk of confused deterrent messages not coordinated or unattended escalation of Korea. North Korea would target the United States with large population centers in Japan. Global nuclear war. Benjamin in 17 war. Korean Peninsula withdrawal in other nuclear states. Major powers China, Russia, and Japan. This region has been the largest militaries and economies of the world because half the world's population perhaps a strike trade. Reagan at the Korean War. Given this factor of nuclear war, their rational policies. One of de-escalation. Advantage. 3 is disaster. Some F-35 acquisition retrofits helicopter carriers into aircraft carriers that diverse disaster response track in 18. Japan is the plan converts helicopter carriers into aircraft carriers to fix operational by winning U.S. F-35B fighters because Rishiers are turning into a powerful ambitious platform which is our major utility for disaster response into training carrier to decrease with small quantum helicopters indeed for ambitious operations. Japan appears to be crossing the aircraft carrier Rubicon because Japan has already announced plans to to buy U.S. F-35B stealth fighters to convert this helicopter destroyer lose one to operate in the F-35B is the still very warp of all trade-offs. The question is what Japan is giving up to gain a modest carrier capability, strong helicopter capability, grounds Japanese hate ourselves, Asian national disasters, Chaka 19 because Japan's self-defense force has held a disaster response training at the lead of the ship by ISMA. Japan has also been supporting disaster response since the 1970s. We have been sharing our own interferences know how so they can learn from our own experience because Japan Maritime Defense Force emphasizes the importance of a sea basing capability in cases of maritime and non-maritime disasters, be basing helicopter bases to be ready to respond to cases of disaster because the GGSDF underscores the role of the joint defense military in saving flagging live community research and rescue transportation livelihood activities during disasters. The AFC is assist disaster-stricken nations all over the world, including the Philippines, Ghana, and Nepal. Only helicopters from Japan saw 113 high-speed and return transmission for airborne helicopters. Now reality, if ban with the 2011 earthquake reaffirmed the importance of helicopters in disaster response and recovery coordination with the technology next are will be offering such capability to customers in the other countries. Japan leads global disaster response by 2015 disaster risk reduction board challenge, and Abe says Japan's critical role in disaster risk reduction managed to realize that partly in own long history coping with earthquakes and tsunamis. Japan history has given a sensitivity to understanding of the other recipient countries that is based on first-hand experience. AIDS and disasters are inevitable. Paper 15. Natural disasters represent a significant threat to human security. In 2012, the Asia-Pacific experienced 93 natural disasters, and it is one of the most dangerous disaster-prone regions in the world. It is prone to cyclones, and contains some of the world's most fatal active faults and volcanoes and flooding. The only questions are when and where the next big disaster will occur. Extinction tips in 13. Growth of earthquake-prone megacities, Jakarta, Delhi, Tokyo. Even one I've ever seen people will be living in one of these metropolitan construction population centers are extremely vulnerable because his history offers a catastrophes that illustrate both effects from a local disaster. Tsunamis in Fukushima was interconnected vulnerabilities could fall because crop failures will lead to price hikes, famines, hoarding, creates instability, hostility, populace, aggressive staff because natural disasters over transportation, global supply chains, compounding catastrophe. Dispatches can have social consequences, produce violent confrontation, producing if distressing scenarios not suggest chaos was given, but rather to consider ways to prevent or at least reduce that possible disaster and foreign opposition movements, reduce the country's ability to cooperate on a global issue, to create the effectiveness of government, to avoid serious international conflicts, to undermine the stability of regions. Fundamental is the capacity to deliver supplies and support sufficiently. Heroic resilience must be matched with capabilities. Release and improving the scale and effectiveness assistance is essential for limiting effects for containing political fallout because military conflicts and historical trends can be averse by increased vulnerabilities to natural disaster limits and capacities to deal with them because disasters affect the stability of entire region to create mitigation because hold on to wider free conflict not managed because throughout the world we tend to by vulnerabilities such to abuse from Mother Nature may see to dwarf threats posed by other mortals. Advantage for solvency, decadal historical analysis both proves disproves revision and validates restraint. For 12-2, Trump is an necessity identified China as bending on dismantling a U.S. global order is not profoundly wrong. The cultural conquests are entirely different. Cold War contributed to structures of hiding tensions that would make the world a more dangerous place. The Chinese attempt capitalists make our place, and they have simpler interests. The rivalry is less dangerous because the lesson of World War II is that the United States must not allow any efforts to gain control of resources. Fear led to a policy of containment. History clarifies how inappropriate the Cold War analogy is for the Chinese relations today. Percent of challenges after years of peace, growth, poverty eradication, expansion of global commerce, and political hours to take different present China surrounded by a wealthy Japan nationalists and near see something in compared to South Korea. Chinese opportunities are critical circumcised. The Chinese know these realities. Americans have long alliances and bases China's ideology to sell China's little ability to exploit discontent and can one possibly believe that China has started 2 years partly as some of the Soviet Union potentially gained through great attention not to fortune and risk. We should not want to ward the Cold War, and we should be very careful to avoid measures that will produce one. That card is marked to produce one.
Ready for cross X?
Yeah, give me a sec. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. What does Korea fear Japan will strike with their conventional missiles?
Korea fears that Japan F-35s means Japan is developing a broad set of offensive strike capabilities. Those are perceived as crossing red lines that are in the Japanese constitution that they will only seek defensive weapons.
But what target?
I don't know.
Japan's target. Okay,
launch
cool.
sites.
Why are helicopters key in disasters other than earthquakes?
Our evidence says they're fast and small enough to get anywhere. They can help with things like tsunamis.
When was the last time a disaster caused extinction?
Well, they haven't caused extinction. Our evidence says that there's sufficient disaster response now.
So, like, of any species in history?
A planetary extinction, none. But like, I
So
don't know.
disasters haven't been threatening in the human era because Hatter is good now. It is bad because of F-35s, which caused Japan to change helicopters into aircraft carriers.
Okay. Why doesn't Japan-China interdependence check conflict?
Well, Japan and China dislike each other a lot from a cultural standpoint, and China thinks that Japan is always kind of up to no good. So like the status quo is okay in Goldilocks, but a building up of offensive strike capability is sort of proof that Japan is no longer prioritizing interdependence for China, which means that there's a risk of escalation instead of a check on conflict.
The Chan card indicates that nationalism causes tension to increase. Who are the nationalist actors?
Raphael.
Well, the Politburo is driven by internal political dynamics that include nationalism. Abe also embodies a unique brand of Japanese nationalism.
Okay. The C4ISR entanglement, what capabilities are entangled now?
Satellites, C4ISR more broadly, which is inclusive of satellites, troop deployments in Japan, our declaratory policy, nukes.
Okay. How are missiles mounted onto F-35s?
That's not the argument.
Yeah, I don't think that's it.
It's that the F-35 causes Japan to buy the JSM.
So
Unless
who
you're asking
are
about
they
aircraft
buying?
carriers.
Who are they buying the JSM from? Is that also the U.S.?
No, Norway's Kongsberg defense system.
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
first
so
line
why
of the
can't they
rail
do
card.
that post-plan?
They could. They have no incentive to because it's only useful in conjunction with the F-35.
Oh, I see. Okay. The China revisionism card, why is co-op inevitable?
Cooperation is inevitable on things like scientific and technological progress, for example, climate change, resolving terrorism, things like that require a multilateral framework for addressing those issues.
Okay.
And both countries have an incentive to engage in dialogue and diplomacy to resolve those things.
I made a chain, by the way.
In addition to the chain, Raphael, so I was talking to Kurt, we can send it with Zoom in the chat.
You're muted.
Raphael, you're
Yeah.
muted.
I know. I have Zoom partitioned on Mac and Windows. So you should still send it through the chain so that I can access it on Windows.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. Raphael, did you send where that mark was?
I'll send it out now.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just sent it on the email chain, and for the Zoom group chat, it says there's a network disconnect. That won't let me send it. Does everybody have it via email?
Yep.
I do.
Gotcha. All right. First off, Japan. Arms sales are the linchpin of the alliance. I'm at 12. Acquiring American military hardware kept the U.S.-Japan alliance tight for decades. Japan became a U.S. military bulwark in the region. The U.S. sees Japan as an ally. The relationship has worked out well. Japan have F-35. We're going to check China will cut against budget. Japan will produce F-35s. The U.S. and Japan share a common interest, countering China, and a strong U.S.-Japanese alliance bolstered by Japan's procurement of highly advanced weapons is the most effective check on China's expansion in the region. Alliance stability causes military autonomy. FATN 19 alliance mitigated level by guaranteeing survival against a battle cap. Military autonomous Japan would alarm China. Eggshell perception gain momentum as incubator every armed U.S.-China relation would be undermined. Cause Japan raise military clash in the ECS. Increase likelihood of cataclysm. Heaven would collapse if U.S. were embroiled and causes nuclear proliferation. Channel it in every night. Japan set up nuclear race. China, Korea, Taiwan, India, Pakistan feel compelled to strengthen their capability. Lack of trust, American commitment to defend Japan. The upset the balanced stage ramification would be destabilizing. Strong U.S.-Japan alliance prevents a range of existential threats. Hamri 2016, the U.S.-Japan alliance will need all its strengths. Since the international environment will be challenging and uncertain, in addition to China and Russia, Japan in the Middle East, unstable global challenges such as terrorism, prolif, and climate require action norms include freedom of the internet. U.S.-Japan will shape the environment, encouraging responsible behavior and imposing costs for destabilizing the preserved world order. The world is witnessing momentous challenges. China, Russia, and ISIL are with simultaneous threats to international order, territorial disputes, and nuclear proliferation present serious risk. Pockets of uncertainty could threaten stability. Dangers of climate and eco-degradation threaten the ability to cooperate in the face of transnational challenges that have important implications. Next off, containment. Tension between China, Russia, and Japan over air dominance means that F-35s are necessary to combat the Su-35. Wong 19, Japan is not next as the JSDF. Japan is under pressure to raise the expenditure. The Japan faces from Japan to since Russian Su-35 is a higher the fighter jets, a highly maneuverable superiority fighter, regarded as the finest fourth generation fighter. Russia sold a 24 to the PLAF. The Su-35 does not have fifth generation self and cutting edge avionics and sensors. Japan F-35 sales are key to bolster its deterrence capability against China. The plan greenlights Chinese expansion to pool the 19 Japan-based leaders need to replace their aging F-2 fighter aircraft. Japan Beijing's increasingly aggressive. Actually, no march of air. Japan must respond to defense interest through robust deterrence, cultivating capabilities to win a war should conflict arise. This means investing in advanced fighter aircraft with radar, even the radar getting solid tech, fifth generation air superiority, counterbalance Japan. China's power. Japan Japan must focus military investment on solutions that will give it asymmetric shape advantages. Fighter aircraft is critical because operating in the Pacific demands a far reach and enough weapons to prevail in a dimensional fight. Backing down causes Russian and Chinese spheres of influence and overexpansion, which escalates to nuclear conflict. Greigel and Mitchell 16 vicious powers using strategy probing to test American power. China and Russia were learning from one another's probes. The U.S. should be confronted with a great power war against nuclear armed pure competitors. Russia and China are unsure of how remaining strength the U.S. has to towards Russia and the option among the U.S. physically able to fill security obligation of the political willing to do so. Rivals probing allies might generate arms race. The U.S. can face a war that culminates in a nuclear attack. Independently, China collapses the global order alone that causes extinction. Branson, Fever 16. Increasingly powerful, China could challenge U.S. interests globally. China has not become more liberal nor becoming more reconciled to the existing war-disruptive behavior, exhibits of military kinds, military disputes undermine U.S. alliances, strategies to confront trade-offs, engagement with China, and preserve primacy. Washington facing authoritarian revisionist China, great part of nuclear conflict. The spectrum of war returns. China is using force to coerce allies to adjust boundaries, and these are pressure on neighbors. Further offset strategy to reestablish American military. The great power complex reached a higher level than any time. Environmental futures become clouder. China have been pushing back against the spread of great power for issue cause. Serious approach. China's fast followers narrowing the pure ground. Whether American West is preeminent capabilities, U.S. will support decision needed to stay in a strategy of primacy. Public support remains strong. Grand change may become shakier. Where the assumption undermined was simply combine the effect of all their global challenges. The counterplan text: the United States federal government should 1. Increase its disaster relief efforts and resources. 2. Cooperate with the People's Republic of China over humanitarian assistance disaster response. 3. Create binding covert military policies that prevent the military from defending Japan in a conflict and prohibit launching a nuclear weapon unless another one explodes on American soil. And 4. Disentangle its nuclear command and control from the Japanese military. And 5. Create a hotline with North Korea. U.S. HADAR's OP and cooperation solves fears. 14. U.S. PXCOM led charge in every disaster in Asia. U.S. should not scale back capabilities. PLA proven HADAR since 49, giving a priority to pursuing China take a role will benefit U.S. and China joint exercise, not as a threat to security, considering response for next disaster. This could ease tension between China and other states. Partnerships mature through neighborly behavior efforts should include China regional exercise. The U.S. should encourage ASEAN to exercise to include China through outer effects outweigh concerns. Playing 3 prevents war, and playing 4 prevents escalation. Hotline solve Korea. Snyder 11. Instance on the peninsula. Single instance precipitate tension. Instantly, the peninsula could unfold along an array of lines. The line steers evoke coordination, stabilize political order that no will enable confrontation is not foreordained. Both share a stable new Ukraine peninsula. They have not established effective responses, and so promotes mistrust responses. Reduce the risk. Next off, topicality. The current annual level of FMS is $55 billion. The SCA 18 FMS of $55 billion for 2018 is a 30% increase. 3 rolling average $40 billion. A substantial reduction is at least 25% of the total dollar value. DFAR is 19. Substantial reduction means a reduction of 25% or more in the total dollar value. Voting issue 1. Impossible affirmatives. A restrictive interpretation of substantial is the only check on topic explosion. They create a huge topic with tiny case negs that make it impossible for the negs. 2nd, hold the line substantially is hard to judge, but subjectivity is inevitable, and it's better to make a determination than an endless proliferation of apps. Finally, the critique. Security discourse naturalizes reactionary appeals to structural violence as a correctives to epistemological failure. Krotsky and Robinson 17 securitization discourse states terror attending to nature response to violence, creating a spiral of war. Others gather outside control, which need to be mitigated. Test to render space government involved with constant war difference, which stands in everyday life. Security discourse to operate social relations stance of the state resides in its unifying function. Wars come to attempt to deny others' dialogue instead of seeking to control the adversary. Redefining space warfare is logistical, does not defy down terrain, but space states make society legible. The CNs of parasitic on left to sustain it will hold war outside the brackets, return to haunt the state's tunnel vision. This appears as uncontrollable black holes and sparking security, as well as the failure of state initiatives such as Iraq. The alternative is a discursive challenge to epistemic frames that solves Krascani and Robinson 17. The creation of fear involves every framing out any claims to not say actualizations. Discursive shifts towards framing all differences, risks. This discourse of new threats frames and issues as security agreement merges emotions and regional regulation. Serialization is framing understanding response to social problems, fears of world framing problems and threats lead to militarized response to blurring of boundaries, leads to a zone in which anyone can become the enemy. This destroys possibility of life and common powers, clenching its fists, yet many spaces are falling through its fingers. Much of the global periphery is becoming forcefully dealing from the world economy. The space of the locus of today's sphere where state power breaks down and insurgent floors. The disaster advantage. They've never caused extinction for thousands of years of human development. They're evidence about all disasters put together, not one in Asia. That was cross-sex. It won't cause extinction. Rock 16 anthropogenic risks are 10,000 times dangerous than all natural risks combined. Even if off by a factor of 100, humanity is more dangerous. Japan has other HADAR ops. They're one ACF, JAC 19. Japan's Western Army and Kyushu and Okinawa shared their experience in disaster operation using various search and rescue equipment and earthquakes, tsunami, and other disasters. But COVID-19 means Japan couldn't prevent a disaster right now, even if they wanted to. Korea, it's unlikely. Hortz and Sanders 18. Geography and capabilities matter more than leaders. Leaders have to trace North, US or Korea can realistically avoid North sides. No war would be a huge and difficult incentive to deter rather than escalate. Kim wants to stay in power. War would be the end of the regime. But arms racing is novel. Taylor and NFL 17 speculators arrived that North Korea's burgeoning nuclear program spark arms race. Clinton agreed to straight North Korea is ensuring a nuclear arms race. South Korea, Thomas Lockheed 17 F-16 South Korean Japanese F-35s are set to get missiles that can hit Pyongyang from 200 miles away. The JASSM allow F-16 to strike nuclear infrastructure. The JSM is extremely stealthy profile, tremendous capability. Japan has never preceded anything like this. The arms racing advantage. COVID-19 screws over Chinese military capabilities, and they won't risk war. Boss 13, Beijing's nightmare defeat would be real. New humiliation is enough to persuade Beijing to not have a word at all. She does not want to go down as who led China's disaster conflict with Japan. She would be doomed. The party wouldn't survive. Status quo thumps impact uniqueness, air-sea battle concept, and the trade war War, ensure a perceived environment of containment and new deals. 1AC Zhangko 19. Dozens U.S. allies have placed orders for that 35. String government has 72. The Jazz South Korea's order 40. Lockheed Martin hopes sold by another 20. BMD and PGS also thump. Kim 18. Beijing is where the U.S. capabilities that challenge retaliatory strike capabilities. U.S. expansion of BMD and PGS raise concerns in Beijing. Chinese nuclear weapons will follow, but Japan and China are buddying anyways, especially over Korea. Kyoto 2020. Japan and China create a major political document that will lay foundation for their relations. While relations between Japan and China have often frayed, ties improved in recent years amid Beijing's spat with U.S. A peace reaffirmed countries would refrain from using force that will cover North Korea's nuclear program. Brandon, anything else?
Capabilities inevitable. They'll buy it off.
From Japan?
Yep.
Japanese capabilities are inevitable. They'll be able to buy it off if they wanted to. All right, sounds good. George, I'm good for cross-ex.
Sounds good. Can you hear me? You good?
Yep, thanks.
All right, sweet. First card on the Japan DA. Where do you think this evidence says arms sales are key to the alliance?
I think the last line, the Ame card certainly says that a strong U.S.-Japanese alliance is bolstered by Japan's procurement of highly advanced weapons, and it says it's the most effective check on Chinese expansion, and both Japanese leaders and U.S. leaders understand that.
No, that evidence says that a strong U.S.-Japan alliance, bolstered by Japan's procurement of highly advanced weapons from the United States, is an effective check on Chinese expansion in the region. Why does it say that like weapons sharing or arms sales are key to the alliance? Like for the first part you've highlighted is just like acquiring American military hardware. Then you have all this stuff that's not highlighted. Keep the U.S.-Japan alliance tight. If you actually read the sentence, it's acquiring the most advanced American military hardware available under licensing agreements, producing that hardware in Japan to boost the economy, and keeping the U.S.-Japan alliance tight, positing Japan as a buffer between the United States and the region, major regional powers. Japan has filled this role for decades. You think the only line that says that arms sales are key to the linchpin of the alliance is the last card?
So,
or the last part of the card.
So I think the most effective reading of that piece of evidence is that the arms sales that the U.S. provides to Japan are the most important indicator of the alliance. They signal a durable commitment with respect to military, which I think we'll argue is the most important facet of the alliance, and it upholds the symbolic effect that every other aspect of the alliance has.
The military autonomy impact, your evidence is good at saying why an autonomous Japan would be bad. Which part says that weak alliance causes military autonomy?
You're talking about
the Fatten card,
right?
The Fatten card, yeah.
Yeah, so the part that talks about the eggshell perception, I think, refers to the weak alliance. It refers to whether or not, if there's a credible U.S. commitment to back up Japan, it prevents that. However, absent one, it would cause this sort of eggshell perception, whereby Japan arms a little bit, causes China to react, causes Japan to develop more, and then that precipitates a security crisis. Japan has no incentive to do so without the U.S. alliance.
That's fine. The counterplan, can you kick planks?
Yes.
Does it solve every advantage?
We believe so.
Okay. The critique, can you win without disproving the desirability of the plan?
Potentially. We haven't really made an argument in the block about it yet, but I think one could be made, yes.
Okay. The alternative, is it material?
What do you mean by that?
Does it advocate something outside of debate?
I think it potentially could. I think that the sort of discursive challenge could occur both in debate and out of debate as a way in which we can reify and correct our epistemic failures that occurred in the 1AC.
All right, what is security discourse?
The way in which we discuss threats, planning for them, resolving them.
Why isn't the DA security discourse?
It likely is. Unfortunately, you all posited that security discourse first, and if you are wrong about it and we're wrong about it, that kind of proves our point on the K.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm sending it out. It's sent, so let me know when you all have it. We're doing 8 minutes, right? Okay, are we all good? Solid. F-35s drive reactive Chinese arms races and conflict in Asia that outweighs 1. Proximity to nuclear powers. 2. Only Chinese arsenals are sufficiently diverse enough and high with magnitude to cause extinction. 3. Interdependence checks conflicts, but fails for Tokyo and Beijing because political dynamics. Find security. COVID can't thump. China diverts spending to buy conventional counter-acquisitions. That's Young Ho. Yes, war. Moscow ignores the humiliation caused by F-35. Japanese offensive strike is perceived as an excess risk because laws for offensive against Chinese naval basing. Perceived containment is only escalatory if Japan can back it up with capability. Proves we solved the event of the DA. The reality isn't about Japan. BMD and PGS solved the Allies' DA by providing assurances, but can't thump because they don't enable offensive strike nor retrofit Sumo helicopters. Their Kyoto evidence concedes the link to alliances because it says Japan desires approach with China, but it's not defense because it doesn't assume F-35 sales. Capabilities are not inevitable. Only the U.S. sells them independently. True drop impacts. 1. Offensive strike acquisition alone causes war. 2. Entanglement draws the U.S. and wars in Asia. And straight turns assurance. Korea advantage. Defense doesn't assume Korean preemption. Kim fears the JSM will lock out the regime military access and strike launch side. Still field strikes against both the U.S. and Japan. That's real. Arms racing is app uniqueness. We stop the launch, not the acquisition. South Korea just not thump. Our internal link is not about F-35s themselves in Japan responding to American sales by buying joint strike missiles from Norway. That was cross-ex disasters. Asian disasters cause extinction by the igniting nature of industrialization, climate change, and trade mean they'll grow increasingly large on scale. Asia's key. It's the largest incentives in the world. Japan models the global HADR. That's Mendoza. Other operations don't solve. They've dropped that only sea-based helicopters can respond quick enough. As per Howard and cross-ex, COVID doesn't mean Japan can't deploy a helipod. The topicality page. We meet the average is 1.5% F-35 sales, 17.8%. The RE-65 hour arms was 2014. The total is only 40 billion. Sam 20 total, 40.5 billion. We meet Gale and Sanoke 18% of 40 billion. The 4 F-35 jets preferred. 1. Arbitrary evidence is about buying weapons, not selling. 2. Logic affixing numerical cutoffs and asking this contrived. 3. Ground regression kills breadth for advantage innovation and topic education. Functional limits limit solve reasonability and avoid substance crowd out the security K. Framework, way the plan, critiques, need uniqueness, and material solvency is key to class fairness, research, permutation, do both, either inclusion of the K, solve systemology, disposed to, and trend, special analysis is good market video, 13 scenarios, you can ability and hypothesis, technical model using, avoiding back to teachings and generations, we can test my hypotheses, apply the policy, and falsifiable, and research, high probability events, nuclear warfare, perm to the F, and the mindset of the K, PERFCON means taking several reps, and as a voter for advocacy and realistic research, epistemic fiat to voting issue, knowledge basing, guts, clash, defense, realism, explains the world as Prolefson and no link, the one I see identified threats, accurately means the all has to protect them entirely, alt causes great power, war can't change mindsets too slow, and excuse original goal of including any part of the plan is bad because it inverts research balance and kills fairness. The counterplan, permutation, do both, and permutation be the app in all combos of the planks. It doesn't solve China. 1. F-35 sales causes modernized conventional capabilities. 2 is the sheer existence of offensive strike causes a Sino-Japanese war. 3 is entanglement occurs via third-party policy as well. Covert fiat is a voter. Unpredictable, not author assumes reneging on Japan doesn't solve. 1. If a conflict starts, it instantly links to that benefit. 2nd is otherwise they won't know, so they'll still modernize carriers and be emboldened because they assume the U.S. supports them. Nukes blank can't solve. 1. Confusion. It won't be enforced nor perceived because it contradicts decades of military doctrine. 2 is conventional escalation alone motivates Chinese and Japanese nuclear launch, even if the U.S. doesn't. Disentanglement does not solve. We have linked satellites and deployments in the region, but it massively links to alliances because it requires the U.S. demating certain nuclear capabilities and disentangling C3 and C2 architectures vis-a-vis alliances. Condos a voto, overburdens the 2AC, kills logic, and adds to you get one, it solves flags. Something solve Korea. 1. They fear Japanese foreign missile strikes and would express those fears via hotline. 2. You cannot reason out of regime survival. Kim launches first and asks questions later. If they fiat soldiers fall through, it's private actor fiat. That's a voter makes being half impossible and can't be a simulator for HADR planks don't solve. 1 is only sea-based heads in the region work. No other capabilities as fast or able to survive a diversity of disasters. 2 is Japan is key because of proximity and global modeling. 3 is China says no because F-35 sales. Adding planks to the voting issue forces the F to be the best idea in history. Rose battle and kills clash and fairness. The Allies DA no link to disrespect drop in South Korea. Appeasing Kim in negotiations, Syria withdrawal, and inherent Trump and ambiguity. Trump withdrawal. Then Korea all thought many 1220 device alliance with Trump's Canadian contribution with the alliance and friends in Japan with Tokyo building new partners, new capabilities, no experience, strikes, complex units, liabilities will lead to a size free thinking guarantees we have partners who consider them as made Japan or its resilient troops. Aegis, Shore, Okinawa, then Abe, resilience will make us 2 short-term lens 12 from the big picture. The U.S. and Japan have a shared values like history, cooperation, broad connections, and a wide variety of various long politics, trade, cultural science, knowledge, and education. Trade force Japan and the U.S. together. No link. Any card outside of F-35's keys, terminal defense will assure them through BMP access intimidations. That was cross-text. Their is
is out of context, but F-22 cutoff stops 18 from the U.S. from the fighters to abandon decision, Highland security troops that way, everything that was 19 for U.S. induced nuclear accident, something more fundamental has to change security guarantees, nor adequate and will remain so the allies mount for hopes to go into the value of security guarantees, most tangible is forward deployed forces, the allies by wars, and it is assumed as long as force management consistent, under left to pursue new governance capabilities, no impact, or respond to diplomacy, not escalation, they would never and can't proliferate or accept Japan ever develop its own nukes, not a nuclear ally, would face operational obstacles to face support, making able to first strike a single device constitution, and the Ethiopia by a difficult time of paying support to changes of follow leaders have all just reality, no autonomy or some channel every at all 19 MPG tickets, something Japan's own defense programs document, emphasizes Japan's own defense efforts that overscale arbiters and as matter of some Japan's capability to figure out security, no alliance launch US freedom, nature and generation sacraments liberal order, the expansionism has gone lies over trade diplomacy, good enough to articling the guarantees, make states of finance and major review of the sports accounts caused by state guys security and secure themselves. Concessions to China are inevitable. That's left for the economic nature of the relationship, mutual interest in climate and terrorism, all thump the link, but China linked to Nikita 20, Abe explained reconciliation of China Washington behind the scenes of the China leads tensions to both the improvement of bilateral relations. Both parties respond through black channels. Let's turn to DA 15. Concerns are overstated experiences of Japan are much greater lengths involve stronger integration in the U.S. could the Ziggers policies U.S. could increase forces Japan competing joint funding discussions as we change to work hard because the U.S. alliance not abandoned. Credibility theory is false. No link. Fisher 60 allies or enemies change their behavior based on credibility. That's just form of behavior even exists. And even if it's supposed to notion that doesn't matter. You'll study because in other cases their answer was no expansion for the years throughout. Everybody was on the line and were mistaken believe credibility of policies towards funding war for the wrong reasons. No internal link to autonomy. That was cross-examination. No evidence says a weak alliance would cause that they're incentivized to respond by competitions and diplomacy because they know the DA would instantly tube their chances of surviving in the region. The containment DA framing issue, every answer is either terminal leak defense or an impact turn to Japan because it proves that they're accepting a peace towards China and it's necessary to avoid conflict. No link. Their wrong evidence does not say once that F-35 stop Russian bombers. One is sea-based helipads check and two is arm tracing motivates additional Russian acquisition defense with terminal defense video 19 findings for defensive rules of the 95 on our 19 of those military power instead of using force Chinese to the call is getting SCS tension parties agreements facts or as Trump thumpers. Trump caved Russia during G8 cyber negotiations and Lunar Gateway. He also came to China during the trade deal pivot to Asia and then after that was a straight lie. It doesn't say F-35 once means military helipads fill in to solve for F-22 capabilities. Accommodation link for left is in Canada 19. Europe about it on Russia there. Retaliate increased compromises Russia other plans to assertive Russian actions or other escalates those 2 hours to powers Russia and the ability to get Russian main influence without have to behave so aggressively to the borders be challenged and forms of absolute country's ability to replace Russian actions not seeking around nation to seeking one of the great powers will take our architecture to ensure stability. Containment causes world recognition of common interest solves it. That's left for decades of Chinese behavior across the island chain proves they stop total regression, but are highly responsive to U.S. postures concessions to China are inevitable, but harness mutual incentive solves for GC60 carbon economics and even to start contests with the cabinet U.S. to increase military presence drones surveillance against all the alliances in great favor of Canadian culture accommodation. The governments have been maintaining their communication of connection and cooperation grow simultaneously to reduce the circulation to maximize the cooperation, minimize the conflict, and need to adjust peaceful accommodation and go back to the alliance DA. It's resilient Carfano 18. The 80s and resilience of the partnership that for the spiking attitudes Japanese US ties are deeper than just common cause geopolitics, both in the common civilizational level, credit to the evidence the US is showing, or doesn't value allies when you look elsewhere the state of the relationship just the opposite. This may be good than trying to have four balancing on those of just allies. That credit at the bottom of the 1AC. It's just one Geo didn't get to tag the US Japan alliance as resilient. I'm good for cross-sex.
Brandon, you want to take a second prep? Okay, we have TOC time of 9:23 left.
Okay.
Okay, Raphael, are you good for cross-sex?
I'm great.
Sweet. What were the theory voting issues on the counterplan?
On the counterplan, it was covert fiat, condo, private actor fiat, and adding planks.
What was private?
If you fiat that soldiers follow through with an order not to launch.
Okay. So your solvency deficit from North Korea was that over the hotline, they would express their concerns about the Japanese strike capabilities. Why can't the U.S. respond via assuring North Korea?
Well, that's the thing. So Korea's concern is that Japan will buy the JSM from Norway. There's nothing the U.S. can do about that. So we would tell Korea, like, sorry, that sucks. I hope they don't. And then they would.
Well, okay, but they obviously would express their concerns via its ability to precipitate a conflict. Why can't the U.S. respond to those concerns?
They can't, because it does precipitate a conflict. Our second advantage says that we can use the JSM, or Japan can use it to strike Korean launch sites.
So that
all
Ev
Kim
says
would
that
have
they
to go off
could use it.
Trump's
That
word.
they.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in order for you to win this deficit, you would have to win
Okay.
that Kim is willing to risk every single Korean missile launch site just because Trump told him Japan won't strike them.
Gotcha. On the alliance DA, your Lind piece of evidence for 2012 says that they're culturally very close and they have a long history of shared identity. I don't understand why those things would hinder Japan's ability to become militarily autonomous if they feel a declining security environment.
Because Japan knows that military autonomy would signal the formal end to the alliance. If they think the US is less committed than they would like them to be, it is more logical for them to respond by drawing closer to the US than by guaranteeing the alliance ends, especially given the cultural history of those two countries.
The argument you made on the case, and then this, I believe it was the Abe card, but the China link turn. How does the affirmative facilitate any sort of Japanese ties to China?
It means they don't arms race.
But this app just says that Japan has, worked with China over
To
like
ease
they've
tension
had
between them. It uses
between
those words,
tensions
ease the tension
over
between
North
them.
Korea. That was your argument
No,
on the case.
that's actually false. Look at the Akita card. It says, quote, "It was good for Japan and China to ease the tensions between them."
Okay, the card you read above that about there not being an alliance, I don't understand the implication between this and then the Carfano card and then the Lin card you read.
No. It's not that there isn't an alliance. It's tagged no alliance laundry list because you read an impact card that was like the alliance solves everything. So we read an internal link defense card.
But this piece of evidence just says that allies are rich. Trade and diplomacy and goodwill do not depend on protecting them. I don't understand
we don't need
why.
them. Alliances don't solve anything. Each individual state is strong enough on itself. They have loads of trade networks, their own capabilities. Entanglement's a bigger risk.
Okay. That's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna send it out. Okay, it should be sent. Let me know when y'all are good. While everything loads, the order is going to be the counter plan, the K, the containment DA, then the disasters advantage, the arms race advantage, then the Korea advantage. Everyone ready? Cool. The counterplan solves 1. Resources. It defeats American resources for disaster relief increase broadly, including helipads, which Japan impacts about global disasters, not just in Asia, which means it solves better. 2 is Hatter co-op cools perceptions of containment and distributes resources throughout Asia. That's Pierce. 3, covert policy, no nukes means no extinction. 5, crisis management with Korea ends the security dilemma and makes escalation probable. Air, neg. 1, sufficiency, risk of Japan prolif outweighs non-quantifiable solvency deficits. 2, combo platter, deficit cards don't assume policies in tandem. Yes, it solves China. 1 is wrong. Junk hose about the worldwide coercion strategy of the U.S., which we reverse. The 2AC drop Pierce's claim that Hatter co-op creates effective crisis management for all of Asia, enables military interoperability that prevents Asian war. Harson 019 Hatter opts with China demonstrate commitment in an international arena, including competing states and open dialogue to future partnerships with other partners. Opening communication with adversaries lead to resounding successes. Co-op enable the forces to understand Chinese SOF. SOFs are adaptable, which makes them perfect for co-op efforts. Jumpstart recovery. U.S. and China have tumultuous relationship with both. Respond in Nepal demonstrated co-op president of the U.S. military might allowing China to develop its own Hatter with norms. 2, a silly offensive strike has existed for a decade, and missiles that way. 3, requires there to be a war in the first place, so it's not a deficit to the counterplan. Covert policy is good. It's key to test whether public announcements are necessary in the first place. Is a core controversy. The resolution purposefully chose a public mechanism since arms sales are posted publicly online. It's a predictable and educational debate over the best cooperative methods. It's also not private actor fiat because military personnel are government officials, and we fiat the generals anyways. We're necking Planck. We're kicking it. The nukes to Planck doesn't fail. 1, confusion doesn't assume fiat, but we'll concede that it's not perceived by others, which means it doesn't link to the net benefit. Enforcement happens because the military and president adhere to the secret policy. 2 is stupid. Japan doesn't have nukes, and China only goes nuclear if they're losing in the first place. Disentanglement, we're also kicking it. Yes, the counterplan solves Korea. 1, Japan doesn't have missiles yet. They're out of speculative, and Japan doesn't yet have the will. They decide to change that, though. Wadsworth 19, conventional strike capabilities defeated since 56 without support legislation. Likely there's no ebb. The public wants this. Has been changing slowly over the decades. Military says good legislation and increments are not enough resources to allow for the conventional whistle of opinion. Tip in the decades, restrictions could relax. 2, Smith only complains missiles lead to uncoordinated escalation, which we solve. Hotlines also solve. Pro-Lift Snyder draft 15 and rapid situation military assets and intervention would result in significant change. The joint response stabilize the situation, enable humanitarian missions emergency, and NOCA leads to spill over into Asia, making an inducible response. The U.S. coordinate the response with China. U.S.-China Hatter also works. 1, the U.S. and China have helicarriers. 2, both have capabilities in Asia and set global norms. 3, China says yes, SOF avoids national security concerns. They've also dropped that the U.S. increases its resources broadly, which solves the, I posted the text of the counterplan after the 2NC, the condo debate. No 2NC counterplans, but infinite condo and judge are good. The negflex outweighs. All arms sales distats are analogous and lack uniqueness, which requires counterplan and K-diversity to generate winning offense, especially to protect the 2-and-R against add-ons. Infinite prep and first and last speeches that turns education. We need to test the app from every ideological angle to check country-specific key warrants. T1 cartiers and framework case to make app offense inevitable, but advocacies have diminishing marginal utility, which means cross applications and time trade-offs make it harder to read disads. The K, the perfcon was answered on the condo debate. Contradictions are good. I'm conceding it. The permutations just as his competition. The containment dissat, it is try or die for military capabilities. We will concede that accommodation of China is structurally inevitable, which means that Japan can only be assured via military capabilities. This also takes out any of the link defense that they've read on the containment dissat that is cross-applicable because China will get accommodated, which means it's only a question of Japanese perception after that. It also solves containment bad dissats to the counterplan, the disastrous advantage. Japan could only solve a natural disaster in Asia. 1AC tips and identifies the Middle East, Africa as hotspots, but even then, all disasters in history never caused extinction. We did the math. You didn't. The dissat massively outweighs. Harak calculates a risk of 10,000 times less probable. This internally cites experts. Harak 16, natural risk factor. We're alive today as evidence. These are uncommon scientific understanding. Create reasonable estimates. Extinction risk might be as high as 0.1%. What about human risk? Experts estimated a 19% chance we destroy ourselves. This is similar to estimates by other experts. Matheny 2007. Helicopters aren't key. Japan has other responses like giving food to other countries in Asia and finding people stranded in the ocean after a tsunami. That's 20C. JICA, the arms racing advantage. COVID massively thumps the advantage because it's a time for Chinese leadership in which they won't risk war in order to boost their soft power, and their military is used on hospital responsiveness instead. The F-30 capabilities mean that Japan is less likely to wage a war, and China too. China won't start a war against Japan because they're already freaked they'll lose, and F-35s only boost Japanese capabilities in a war. That's Moss. She will kill war advocates. Buchan 14. There's China is happy with the order. The regime is unwilling to bear the cost to balance American power ideology centering on power and the order rather than gambles like aggression. 2010, Flare-Up Johnson found no ebb of escalation Beijing to accept his hand-downing anti-Japan nationalism, placing anti-war editorials and outlets and shutting up anti-Japan voices. China's records suggest the government doesn't share national sentiment, rather interested in moderate advances. Possibility of U.S. intervention checks. Moss 13, U.S. involvement is real enough to give China the pause. China favors peaceful solutions. Its actions bear this out. China spent too long telling the world it poses no threat to fulfill all China bashers' prophecies. Beijing wants to influence diplomatically. Abe won't cause war. Buchan 14, Abe isn't going to war. His partners would block escalation. New Kamito are serious about pacifism. They exert a calming pressure. Japanese retain the pacifist core. Enormous opposition to military status. China is the #1 trading partner. If relations deteriorate and drop exports, this would jeopardize growth and his survival. The prime minister will be measured. There's also no impact uniqueness. Containment's been the policy since ASV was implemented, yet no war, which PGS, BMT, and other deals to other countries should have only exacerbated. That's Kim and 1EC Jong Ho. ho. Every ally gets them. Chan 19, the U.S. has been selling the F-35 to allies, Japan, South Korea, Australia, with the U.S. itself also deploying the fighter jet. The U.S. is trying to form an F-35 friend circle in the region, which becoming a threat to China's national defense. Plus, Singapore, Mizukami 19, why the F-35 over another jet. South Korea can't afford to look weak. Singapore is small and increasingly accessible to China. This doesn't solve the Japan DA because it's about Japanese perceptions of arms sales as the linchpin. This is not a question of U.S. capabilities being in the region or selling other capabilities, but rather about the unique link story that the one in R will expound on. The Kyoto shows that Japan and China can co-op despite sales and resolve crisis. This doesn't prove the link turn because it only works in the presence of U.S. capabilities being sent to Japan in the first place. The new hotline prevents Pascal carding and ping 18. Japan and China prevent the clash. Communication took 10 years. Creation shows that China and Japan hope to manage dispute, advancing understanding and trust. The system will reduce conflict, easy tension, surviving relations. They're broadly, I'll skip that card. Korea advantage. There's no North Korean war. Horowitz and Sauter say that material and situational constraints on war matter more than WISP's tensions. One, geography, China's proximity, South Korea's conflict aversion, and DMZ artillery placement make everyone wary of war. Two, Kim and Trump both have a strong incentive against clash because they perceive it as a risk to their own leadership. Three, international involvement in Falco 18 war. It's doubtful that Korea would start it. South Korea's hardly sustainable target nations would come to the aid. It's believable. Korea's weapons for defense. The U.S. unlikely to attack. Key reason might be leadership. Problem may be the coalition with China and Russia. Do not wish to focus enmity. If Trump made a crater, you would risk the problems. Four, they'd be instantly neutralized. Lubbock 18, another sided reason that would be difficult is even less convincing. All Korean facilities add up to less than 3 dozen. Most of them are small. Given Korea's radars, missiles, and aircraft are badly outdated with their antique electronics countermeasure. The limited attack might miss a wheelbarrow, but Korea has no nuclear launchers to miss. Not yet. 5, Kim's rational, right? 18, Un isn't crazy. There's never been any Ev. Kim is less rational than Russia. Kim's behavior isn't reckless. Kim knows America knows any attack would produce thousands of dead Koreans and soldiers via our conventional artillery. It's good reason to think that Trump is bluffing reckless. Has got what he wants. Recognition with the president. All these are still true in the case that Japan got conventional missiles and South Korea thumbs. So Lockheed says that South Korea has all the capabilities they fear, and they could buy it from Norway too. The capabilities inevitable. Clark 14, Norway decides to place a bet on the GSM. Australia expressed the interest in buying them. The Norwegians pitch the weapons to Japan. South Korea will try to sell it to anyone who buys an F-35. Raytheon announced that they will team to compete for the program.
You good?
Yep.
Let me just put the timer on. Okay. So you said Japan's had conventional strike for decades. Do you know what conventional strike or offensive strike is?
Yeah, I don't literally mean missiles, but just that they've had U.S. presence that could take out Chinese capabilities around.
So you think that U.S. presence that can take out Chinese capabilities is offensive strike?
Okay, I misspoke with the phrase offensive strike, but the U.S. capabilities do threaten Chinese launch sites, which should trigger the impact.
Okay, so what part of the counterplan solves Japan and China going to war? I'm looking at your 2NC text. I'm not even sure what plank is supposed to do that. Conveniently.
It solves U.S. draw-in, which is the only risk of
okay, but you don't solve
escalation.
Japan and China go to war. You just
directly.
make sure the U.S. doesn't get involved.
Not directly,
Okay.
although our Pierce card indicates
so if Japan and China go to war, which you just said you don't solve, Japan sees that we're not getting involved. Why doesn't that link to the net benefit?
I believe I kicked that plank.
Right. Okay. So this gets me to the next question. You kick the disentanglement plank. How do you solve U.S. drawing?
Because the U.S. would cooperate with China over other issues.
How do you stop the U.S. from getting drawn into a Sino-Japanese war? Look at your 2NC text. You kicked disentanglement. You kicked reneging in Japan.
Right, I agree. Our cards indicate that it creates military interoperability that diffuses crises. So even if Japan would go to war with China, the U.S. would not escalate, and they certainly would not go nuclear.
Okay, so if Japan launches a missile at China, the U.S. do they do anything in the world of the counterplan? Do you think they do anything?
They try to diffuse the crisis with China.
But they wouldn't militarily act.
Correct. I don't think so.
How does that not link to the net benefit? Japan is in a war and the U.S. does not defend them. That is a violation of the treaty.
Well, I guess if you win that you have an internal link to war already, then it's just a question of who has a faster internal link.
Don't solve a Sino-Japanese war.
Yeah, the counterplan doesn't directly solve it. Yeah.
Right. So why doesn't it link to net benefit? Because once that war starts, we see the U.S. isn't defending.
Because we're still trying to act as an honest broker in that conflict, which
so
Japan.
So Japan is fine with the U.S. trying to mediate conflicts between China and them.
As long as we're giving them the capabilities they perceive as necessary for their national security.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we tell North Korea through a hotline?
What Japan is doing with their strike capabilities,
But how do we know?
because we
And like,
talk
what would
with
that even
Japan
be?
all
Like,
the
do you know what
time.
Japan is doing? So we'd be
Well, I
like,
don't,
Japan
because
is
I'm not in
gonna...
the military.
Well, so hold on though. Let's explore this scenario. You'd be like, Japan's not gonna bomb you. We promise.
Yeah.
What if says that Kim believes the U.S.?
The drought card, I believe, says that crisis management over
Yeah,
time would
it says
solve.
it says that phrase, crisis management. Where does it say that Kim Jong-un trusts the U.S. promising Korea won't be bombed?
Well, time begets solvency. The more often that the
doesn't.
U.S. gives accurate information, the
But
more
they'll see
Kim
that
will
they bought
believe
the
us over time.
JSM. It's
Right,
inverse.
from
They'll see
another
the counterpart
country.
wasn't true.
From another country.
That was always our point. It was always from Norway.
I'm sending it right now. Does everybody have it up? Yep, we're good. All right, awesome. The dissent outweighs first military autonomy, goes to nuclear. Japan retaliates with conventional strike, arms buildups, and regional aggression to compensate for perceived insecurity. It draws in China and Korea, which turns those advantages. Autonomy makes negotiating the plan impossible independently. It confirms the Beijing eggshell hypothesis. The alliance is political cover for Japanese arms buildup. Second, prolif. It ensures extinction via a global arms race. It's an impact filter that makes each impact more escalatory and triggers preemptive strikes. It turns the case China, North Korea, that was above 3 disasters. Hedging destroys regional hub and spokes cooperation over environmental issues, which makes Japan less likely to resolve it. 4, independently, the link turns the case. Also 17, to turn away reduced influence of both global uncertainty alone would have no line effect on China and Korea, leading to further aggression alliances, potential alteration of Asian security. The line by line, the uniqueness argument, group 1 and 2. Assurances are high now. The 2AC cites examples that are unrelated to Japan. Their evidence is media spectacle that ignores Trump's long-term strategy that increased material commitment. He's increased high-level meetings and military cooperation. Their emphasizes rhetoric, which is irrelevant. It's just a question of material conditions. The alliance is high now. Coleman's and Kozlov 19. As the presidency unfolds, Trump has switched away from campaign threats in favor of good diplomatic relation with Koreans and Japanese. This is one of the clear lines of the Trump narrative. Although Trump openly criticized the benefits of improved stronger military and diplomatic measures towards Asia, Trump's military expansion is really evident in Asia. Although Trump's initial isolation discourse met with great satisfaction among Asian states, much of the anxiety has gradually dissolved. Trump referred to long-standing security alliance to Japan. Zimbabwe was relieved by Trump's policy directed at NOCA, saying U.S. Japan share the same views. Trump's strong stance to go hand in hand with obviously have to forward a stronger Japanese role in regional security. Although Obama and Trump got radically different motives, their strategies have made more or less similarly built around a hub and spoke system and fundamental alliances. General policy is roughly the same. The resiliency arguments group this Lind, Carfano, and the troops argument. The magnitude of the link overwhelms. Even if there are cultural ties, security is key. The plan's a shock that jars Japan's leadership and makes the questioning them the core tenets of the alliance. It's sufficient to destabilize cooperation. That's the Ahmed evidence. The alliance is not locked in. An exogenous shock could tip Japan toward three-arm lift 19. What is at present is not necessarily forever. Japan will face dynamic environments, difficult trade-offs. Many manifest an exogenous shock in of Japan's trajectory. This appears less remote given China and Korea's policy geopolitical shifts. U.S. decline, Trump's skepticism, pursuit of independent military capability seems likely. Japan's walking a tightrope. Future moves make it unstable. Lift 19 have insecurity in Asia across Japan. The hedge available to us a clear answer no. Across 10-year time horizon, Japan behave more in a remnants of balancing security shifts, trade, investment, and public opinion just little influence during import use rotation developments rates concern U.S. cred does sustainably race to be seen and hinge on what comes next. Whether Japan can walk the Trump tightrope will be critical for the future. However, Japan appears all in alignment with the U.S. No link argument. Group this with the Ev out of context argument. The plan destroys the alliance. The purchases of F-35s are the key commitment from the U.S. and signal active assurance in the face of a rising China. The plan is a complete 180 on our ally in affordable time, which incentivizes hedging and non-cooperation to the U.S. Their manning out says that Trump is taking out the troops. This bolsters the threshold for the link. F-35 is key. Conflict 19. F-35 says America's Belt and Road. No other countries have built a fighter like the F-35. What's countries sabotage Iraq, switching is not appealing. The F-35 states very security relied on the U.S. for decades. Joint strike fighter provides close ties to the U.S. Current reality favors the U.S. version. It's the tie that binds Olsen 70 F-35 fighters. The ties that binds specific alliance. Japan's been pushing back on China's service nation is enlisted in the security order in the Pacific. Pacific military players say the aircraft is highly capable of brings the advanced alliance building with partner nations versus the F-35. It's key to interoperability. Japan times IT Japan security, including F-35s aimed at enhancing interoperability to the SDF and the U.S. military equipment enables close coordinated operation and U.S. alliance to advance on the next level of integration. They say F-22. It's about a cancellation in the mid-2000s, which doesn't answer any of our break analysis. The U.S. is now selling an F-22 F-35 hybrid, which the F would prevent. Cato 18 Lockheed Martin has approached Japan with fighter jet based on its elite F-22 stealth fighter, demonstrating Washington's trust in Tokyo's defense partner that the advanced aircraft would combine elements of the F-22 and the F-35. They say the troops are going to explain that above. It bolsters our link threshold because we're withdrawing. We need the F-35s to signal residual commitment. The no impact argument isn't true. It doesn't presume the environment that's created by the plan. They perceive there would be a benefit to diplomacy if they lose their security guarantee. It causes proliferation. Caraco 18 factors that lead to nuke proliferation, erosion of extended deterrence, availability of tech and knowledge. Those factors are evident as the strong U.S. leadership. Japan can become convinced as alone to advance the largest nuke industries with stockpile materials sufficient for hundreds of weapons, and the ability to break out and acquire and store period cultural barriers could change through strategic shock. Abe may seek reinterpretation. This answers the next piece of no proliferation evidence. There says there's an allergy that's disproven by the piece of evidence that says that they have capability, and a shock would erase the allergy. The no autonomy argument. This evidence takes out their advantage, but not our disadvantage. It says that the guidelines emphasize defense now because they rely on the U.S. guarantee, but the link proves that they remove it. The no alliance argument. We're not going for the alliance argument writ large. We're just going for proliferation and autonomy. The concession argument is disproven by the U.S. strong front. Now there's no diplomacy. Osnos 20. Admit have taken aim at China's populace, and America must ensure China retains its place. Admit frames China as a hardened foe too distant to be settled diplomacy relation deteriorated by the end of 19. Washington, but abandoned engagement with China. The cred theory, or they desire cooperation. Japan has some ties with China, but the F would remove that because they perceive China as being a threat. The back channels argument is uniqueness for us. It says Japan trusts us now because we're signaling material commitment. They wouldn't go to back channels because they would get rid of it. The no credibility theory, I'm not going for that. No internal link, I'm not going for it. They would respond with hedging. That's the shocks argument. Resiliency was answered above with the rest of the arguments.
Okay, we have 10 minutes. I started it. Okay, we're good. We have 7-12. Gio, do you need me to send it out, or can you send it out? Unmute yourself.
Sorry. I said if you could do it, that'd be good, but I can do it. I already started, so that's fine. I'll send out the
Okay.
cards now.
Yep.
I'm putting them. See, I'm not gonna make a doc, so I'm putting them in the email chain, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, I sent them. Is everyone good for an order? Yeah, sorry, good, okay. China advantage. North Korea advantage. Disaster response advantage. Advantage counterplan. Containment disad. Alliance DA. You all good? Yep, good. 3 scenarios for nuclear conflict. First is conventional arms racing due to Japanese carrier capability. Either side grows emboldened to launch, circumvents defense because it is perceived as a question of regime survival. Second is acquisition of offensive try alone causes escalatory naval balancing, which are conceded no counterpoint solves because it's about the existence of the weapon. Third is entanglement, alliance obligations, force involvement, breaks deterrence, and economic checks. As Sino-Japanese arms race outweighs nuclear powers are uniquely proximate. Only large and diverse arsenal cause extinction. Independent solves other flashpoints. Yes, China war and a risk internal dynamic drive nationalism. Acquisition of Japanese carriers overwhelms solution of deterrence because it makes first strikes feasible, and they've dropped security concerns outweigh. No defense assumes F-35s are authors right from last year and say that the latest sales tip the balance towards escalation, which is a frame for all impacts on this page. No alt causes at the bottom of this page. First, other sales don't retrofit Japanese helipads into aircraft carriers. Second, only F-35s motivate acquisition of JSMs. And third, even if a war started, it only escalates given sufficient offensive capability overcomes their Singapore warrants and other allies having them as well. The North Korea advantage, yes, no co-war sales cause North Korean preemption of both Japan and the United States. Defense doesn't assume unbridled aggression and irrationality, spurred a desire to save the regime at all costs. Their block evidence ignores a strike on Japanese soil that stokes reciprocal fears in South Korea and Taiwan means every Asian power gets drawn in. No instant neutralization because of that. Kim is not rational. Their evidence is terrible and has no qualifications. Rationality explains above. Capability is inevitable. Doesn't matter since they don't have the joint strike missile. Japan only acquires it because of the combo between F-35s and the JSM. Even if we still solve a separate Japan scenario, the disaster response advantage, Japanese F-35s requiring converting sea-based helicopters to carriers that detracts from disaster response efforts. Only capabilities based in Japan and with the speed of a helicopter are sufficient speed to solve Asian disasters. Yes, extinction Asia is key. It's the largest incident rate in the world, and their authors ignore the compounding effect of industrialization and climate change. Any bolt from Labubu, like super volcanoes, tsunamis, and hurricanes can cascade globally. Only HADR at the starting point checks their spread, which overcomes their warrants about math. Only the other HADR solves stuff, and the helicopters are key. Lacks the capability of helicopter basing in Japan's key to global efforts because of signaling. The last thing about COVID is wrong. They've dropped that it doesn't mean Japan can deploy a helipad, and they have no evidence to suggest so. The advantage counterplan sufficiency and combination are a terrible frame and results in artificial inflation of a counterplan that can't solve anything, and we will win that the counterplan doesn't officially solve any deficit by winning deficits. Now, permutation to both, permutation to the AF, and every combination of the planks it shields the counterplan bans nuclear detonations and fiat. The US doesn't get drawn in. That zeroes the impact of Japan proliferation because we know nuke war involved. The US starts first is the China deficit. The existence of sales cause the Chinese conventional modernization. Second, often strike alone means Japan is able to start a word which they don't fiat. Third is entanglement. They can't end it because US satellites and troops are forward deployment. But fiating government fails. First, any low-level gray zone conflict like the Senkaku or the SES means it shreds the alliance that Japan instantly sees will never defend them, or it's not perceived and they'll keep arms racing. The plank not to launch fails. No compliance or perception because it contradicts a decades-long policy, and China will modernize conventionally, building up latent pressures that force Japanese process for proliferation. The counterplan doesn't solve a Sino-Japanese war that was cross-sex. They don't prevent U.S. drawn because they kick the disentanglement plank. China will strike the mainland, which they said permits U.S. involvement, but it also links the net benefit because Japan will immediately see that we aren't defending them. Doesn't solve Korea. You can't negotiate with an international leader who fears missiles above all. all else, Kim is uniquely sensitive to Japanese acquisition of the Joint Missile Strike, starting a hotline, which just caused him to tell the USD what he was afraid of. That answers the hotline solve cards. There is no misperception to clarify. He intentionally launches Japan has sufficiently dangerous missiles. The radar planes don't solve military interoperability, doesn't solve arms race because China fears Japanese capability to offensive strike with vertical takeoff allows Japan to undercut Chinese naval interests and threaten the mainland. Only removing that capability solves the containment dissad. This zero is the allies. Dissad one. They've conceded Chinese concessions are inevitable. Thumps every link about perception of the process of the app. Second, we have impact turn moving towards China. The plan moderates military containment, which solves the China war. It doesn't thump the case because our internal links are about F-35s, but it proves resilience because other military capabilities like troops solve. The alliance has had no autonomy. It's suicide because they have to defend themselves from every power in the region, or it's happening now. No impact returns case. The plan instantly ends sales. Durable famine means perceived, and China's reassured because there's less missile capability in the region, but we turn the impact because Chinese conventional modernization causes Japan to proliferate. No prolif or Beijing eggshell hypothesis. They don't get to the impact. Trade coalitions veto. No city would agree to a hostile style. Nukes make it infeasible. Public and political pressure also ensures buildup is slow and has no impact. This means no hedging and no returns case. And if not hedging, it means that the hedging that their evidence is talking about is the status quo and not nuclear. They dissad is zero. Jonah has dropped that credibility theory is false. It proves the entirety of the dissad. It's debunked by empirical studies. There's a correlation between a country's perceived legitimacy and the behavior of other countries. Conceded it's also impossible to predict what other country considers important to credibility, which means we have no idea of how Japan views F-35 sales. That means Japan doesn't make decisions based on the credibility of the U.S. security blanket. 0% of the dissad. We end arms sales to Japan a few months ago. They asked us only one weapon from one company. We would maintain all ballistic missile defense, all true presence, and the entire nuclear umbrella. Their IET's evidence says undervotes AF. The headline is why the F-35 isn't good enough for Japan, which takes out the dissad. No link uniqueness. Trump ended South Korean rotations, failed to stop the Korean missile program, pulled out zero. Those all way or empirically disprove the entire link. It's also resilient. We have troops stationed in Okinawa. We sell JP and HSBMV systems today. Protects the alliance at all costs. That's their uniqueness. Japan's those that going autonomous instantly and the alliance, which is bad. Exogenous SOC is not the plan. They have no evidence that suggests this. Even if we're not going to tie up, there's no reason why the plan will result in autonomy or proliferation, just a weakening of the relationship.
I believe it's 9:23, starting now. Okay, that's time. The order is the Japan DA, then the containment DA, then the counter plan, then the disasters advantage, then the Korea advantage, and then the arms race advantage.
Sorry, you said alliance as the top?
Yeah.
And then containment?
And then the counter plan, and then disasters.
Okay, then Korea, then China. Yeah, I got
Yep.
you.
Cool. The frame for this debate is the link controls the internal link of the app. Any risk that Japan reacts poorly leads to the breaking of eggs and more likely to weaponize. That's the Oslin card, which means any risk of a link means that they can't solve the China advantage, which also ends up turning the Korea advantage. The regional aggression and autonomy result from it because Japan feels like all bets are off and they have no capabilities that would be able to counter Chinese interests in the region. Nuclear prolif and hedging results, of which fiat can't check because it only keeps the U.S. from selling arms, which is exactly our link story. It's not suicidal to hedge. Even if it is, they feel like they have no choice because U.S. arms sales are the only way that they can hedge against Chinese interests in the region, especially Chinese naval balancing, which is their internal link story. The Wadsworth evidence indicates that trade, veto, nukes, etc. don't matter as much because there's support now. There's no support now for conventional weaponization, but that can change because a public shock would lead to a dramatic reorganization of the Japanese military that would undermine the ability of Abe to keep nationalists in check. Hedging won't be small without the new hybrid technologies that is coming from the Cato evidence says that all bets are off and Japan has no choice. Credibility theory wrong doesn't answer any of the dissad because we don't cite credibility theory, and the only card they read in the 2AC is about U.S. soft power. They've conceded every card about why F-35s are key. In the 2AC, the Ahmed card indicates it's the linchpin of the alliance and that there is no choice. The LIF evidence indicates that it would be an exogenous shock that would upset the tightrope that the Japanese military is currently working on. The Caverly card indicates that it's, quote, the Belt and Road for the Japanese-U.S. alliance, and that it's the only way in which we can shore up our other kinds of technologies and make sure they work together. The Olsen card indicates that it's the tie that binds the rest of the relationship together, and the last Olsen card of Link turns the BMD and nukes argument because it's the only way that we can make our militaries interoperable, which means that they aren't assured by U.S. capabilities in the first place. Without F-35 sales, the ending of South Korean troops in Syria has nothing to do with Japan, which was a conceded one in our argument about how every single thumper has to be specific to the Japanese alliance, not just random events that Trump did broadly. Okinawa doesn't solve. The columnist card indicates that the only way that Japan will be assured is via military sales over time that can compound and keep the relationship alive. The exogenous shock argument at the bottom was totally unwarranted. In the 1AR, the containment DA, our uniqueness arc of conceding that concession is inevitable magnifies the link because Japan needs to be more assured after the plan of which they make it impossible to do so. It can only magnify the link. It also solves the moderation argument because it means that concessions are incoming, which will cause trade and security cooperation, which will moderate Chinese behavior in the future, which means that they can't win any risk of offense. The counter plan, I'm kicking it, concede perm to both. The Pearson Hirono card went dropped. It says that U.S. China Hatter separately are able to solve disasters and they are more effective. It cites things like Nepal, and their evidence only indicates that Fukushima was prevented by Japan and no other disaster in history has. The disasters advantage, the Hirak evidence indicates that the dissad is infinitely more probable and puts the math to it as 10,000 times more because natural risks have never caused a species extinction, but nuclear weapons could. Time frame, control, solvency will all be dead from a nuclear blast before the disaster occurs. The Korea advantage, they've conceded terminal defense. The Lotwek card says that US PGS technology is able to neutralize Korean launch before it could go nuclear or another actor could get drawn in, which means that there's no impact to it because they just get blown to smithereens. There's also no drawn, which was another conceded argument. Our Falco card indicates that no one actor wants to get involved in the region, which means that even if there's an escalating conflict between Japan and North Korea, it wouldn't go nuclear and the US could take it out before. Preemption might be, preemption is suicide, which is a reason that North Korea wouldn't do it in the first place. There's also geographical constraints that make it more unlikely that they strike in the first place. That's a Horowitz card. There's no reason to strike the Japanese mainland. And the Kim Jong-un is rational per the right card. And even if he's not, he wouldn't risk literally dying from a U.S. strike. SOCO is buying the GSM technology, which should thump the impact uniqueness. That's the Clark card, the arms race advantage. It's just a function of the DA because it's a question of Japan creating weapons after the arms sales. And we have a mass link turn to the survival and naval balancing argument on the dissent. The alliance is also turned by the DA. National security preemption or nationalism was preempted in the bloc. The Boucham card indicates that Xi will purge any nationalists in the Chinese government who want to war with Japan because he fears that they'll lose to Japan, which F-35s make it more likely that it'll lose. That's the Moss card, which means that it's more and more unlikely that they'll go to war in the first place as long as their sales are. Our other Boucham card indicates that Abe won't stoke nationalism either because he risks upsetting the U.S. alliance, which would only be true if the F-35s are sold.
Okay, we have 7-12. Okay, the order is China, North Korea, disaster response, containment, alliances. RIP to 5 minutes. Because high school times. Okay, is anyone not ready? Awesome.
F-35 sales drive reactive Chinese arms races cause nuclear war via strike pressures. That is Jiangkou and Tan. The two and are effectively neglected all impact calculus. As I know, Japanese arms race outweighs the full risk of an alliance collapse. One is the unique proximity of arsenals. China has interest in Central Asia. They're a geographically much larger power in drawing Korea, Taiwan, and Australia. Second is only Chinese nukes can get 4,000 warheads off the ground. Nothing else comes close to extinction. It's the tiebreaker of 7 billion. The infinite future generations means you have a category preference for affirmative offense. Freeze economic ties. Solve Japanese anxiety. Only intentionally motivated Chinese strikes escalate. These are all conceded frames, so minute amount of mitigation is enough to win. F-35 sales are not a function of the DAR advantage. Was always about the Chinese reaction to Japanese acquisition of weapons. They have consistently dropped two separate scenarios. One is Japan will rebuild sea-based helicopters into aircraft carriers with vertical launch. That grants some de facto offensive strike. That alone causes a global war because every country rushes to do the same thing. They will directly launch missiles. Two is entanglement. Satellites, troops, and nukes mean the U.S. is forced to defend Japan at low level. Gray zone provocations caused by F-35. Security dynamics explain nationalism. Xi won't purge war hawks because he will make the decision to go to war. Our evidence is from last year. Theirs is from over 7 years old. He doesn't want to lose, but F-35s invert that frame because they allowed Japan to start a war and win. That means China's only window and chance for arms racing is now. They've dropped the question of regime survival, which means the sheer existence of arms sales alone causes an imperative towards Chinese conventional strikes. And North Korea advantage, not going for a concede no war. None of the warrants for no strike assume a Chinese offensive due to F-35s and mean the South Korea threat can't take out the F, but conceding no Korean war buffers the impact of prolife because it means that no country in the region reacts to Japan having weapons, only a war started by China. Disaster response, not going for enough disasters, and Hatter interoperability does not assume F-35, so can't mitigate the rest of the case. Containment, U.S.-China cooperation and concessions are inevitable. If only physical capabilities matter, then every other military system in the world solves the DA, but this stumps any possible link arc about Japan staying secure. It's also an additional internal link to a U.S.-China war because the plan moderates containment policy with China. This solves wars reassures Japan because they have dropped that Japan desires rapprochement with Xi. It also proves resilience. They dropped one argument because the relationship survived every shock with China, trade, climate change, terrorism, etc. But those do not solve our advantage nor moderate policy enough because it is a question of the weapons used in a war itself, i.e. the effect of F-35s have on causing Japan to acquire aircraft carriers. The Allies, there is effectively zero risk of this disadvantage. Winning Japanese proliferation requires proving that Abe would choose to give up an alliance that's lasted for over 60 years. Every American-Japanese trade deal passed his constitution and all forward deployed true presence in the region. You should treat every card not about F-35s as terminal affirmative defense because it either one buffers the link, improves relationship, is structurally resilient, or two provides alternative causes that threaten the relationship outside of sales. Link does not control the F. Our evidence is not about weapons broadly, but the specific dynamics caused by F-35s. They force Japan to retrofit and reload helipads and build aircraft carriers. That's our Lieutenant Jiangkou evidence, so that's a Chinese nightmare. It forces a conventional offensive strike arms race. The lanes and numbers also prove that nothing else interferes. But prolif itself is impossible. The 2NR blows through this and has no external impact. Trade coalitions would veto the bill to build nukes. No city would ever agree to host a silo, and they'd be super afraid of a Chinese nuclear strike, even if public and political pressures all ensure buildup is super slow, which gives us a sufficient time frame differential. Means we outweigh both the magnitude and time frame. Hedging is irrelevant. It can't stop because it's all bluster. That's the point. The 2NR themselves said that only capabilities matter, only threats to the latent capability behind them of F-35s actually can implicate the case. It's super small. It's been happening for decades because are happening for decades, which is a comparative frame that only our evidence gets to. Credibility theory. The one NARA has no idea how the LSDA works. Our evidence is a Yale study that says credibility is irrelevant in international relations. No state can predict how another responds based on perceived legitimacy. It's factually impossible to measure by how much the alliance has decreased or why that matters at all. This takes out the whole DA. It zeroes the link to Japan. Does not care about alliance credibility. It means the F-35 is irrelevant to the broader relationship. The 2NR forgets all logic. The link story is not about why F-35s are literally necessary for the alliance, i.e. we're not shooting down Chinese planes. It's about Japan considering the weapon as important, i.e. the Belt and Road of the alliance. But their link explanation proves that it's just cherry-picking headlines. Interoperability is the status quo. F-35s aren't key. Nukes, satellites, and troops are all resolved. Proven by the counterplan. Brazilian solves the whole DA. One is history. Japan has survived every single shock. They brushed off the Taiwan Strait crisis. Trump spoke out of sight of Obama's refusal to review Okinawa. Two is logic. We've canceled dozens of arms sales in the past, like F-22s. The one now agreed there was a cancellation in the mid-2000s. Three is culture. Controls both public and political opinion. Our Lind evidence uses the phrase civilizational ties and describes the two countries as beyond an alliance. Four is uniqueness. The fear of China is still pervasive and pushes Japan towards the United States. Additionally, other capabilities solved. One is troops. So those cases they outweigh everything else with the most visible signal of commitment. I mean, there's always a physical backstop, which solves the impact, which solves the triple impact of the DA. Two is nukes. This is the alliance debate 101. The U.S. security blanket and willingness to launch on Japan's behalf solves fears of prolific as Japan can borrow our capability. Three is other sales. The app is one weapon from one company selling Aegis ashore, BMD, Block 1A, and Block 2A are all enough. I mean, the risk of an arms race massively outweighs the DA. Good debate.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Good debate, everybody.
Yeah, good debate.